All right, sir. Well, like I was telling you, as soon as you walk in, it's today. I'm really blessed about this. It's a true honor to have you
Thank you.
on. Aside from the remarkable career that you have, aside from all the accomplishments that you have, the fact is that since you started your career, you have taken a lot of pride on always telling where you're from. You're very proud of that, of El Paso, of Juarez, and to share a little bit of your story, to have a conversation with you. I just want to thank you for accepting my invite in that time, of course.
No, man, it's a blessing. It's a blessing when people want to know your story, when people want to know where you come from, what you've done, where you've been. Obviously, sometimes people look at you in a different light, which I understand because I've been blessed to travel the world. I've been blessed to wrestle all over the world, and sometimes people think that you're untouchable or that you're unattainable in that sense. But for me, it's a blessing to be able to communicate with the people that love wrestling and with the people that are from El Paso, Ciudad Juarez. They know that I grew up here. They know that I went to school here, that I did many, many things here, and I think we can relate to that. And I just want to let all those kids know from this border town, Juarez, El Paso, that anything in your life is possible. If I did it, a kid from Segundo Barrio that had an amazing dream, working for the biggest company in the world for 10 years, that's something, if I accomplished it, many kids can still do it. So I'm happy to share my story with you. Anything that you want to know, I'm here to do that. So let's get started, brother.
Wow, thank you so much. By the way, guys, this conversation is going to be in English and Spanish. So for those that maybe are waiting for the Spanish version, know that it is coming. So again,
Or thinking that I don't want to talk Spanish.
maybe yeah, there you go.
They said, "Oh, when I post stuff, like, how come you don't say it in Spanish?" I'm like, I'm bilingual.
Oh, yeah, do you also get the opposite as well?
Sometimes I do. Yeah,
Sometimes?
when I like, well, you just speak Spanish or whatever. I'm like, I'm blessed enough to be able, and my IQ is better than a lot of people if you know two languages. So for all those haters, there you go.
Well, thank you for that, sir. So again, we're gonna focus on the English and then also Spanish. By the way, let's go ahead and get started. 21 years of career, still going strong. Talk to us about your your love for wrestling. Where did it start?
Well, it started with my grandfather. My grandfather was born in Lerdo, Durango. And he married my grandmother. They came to Juarez. My dad was born in Gomez Palacio. They came over here when he was a little kid. And ever since I can remember, that's all I wanted to do. My grandfather used to take me to El Auditorio José Manuel Santos to watch the Amazing Stars, El Marroja, El Legionario, El Legendario, which is different from El Legionario, Los Cobardes, Mil Máscaras, Dos Caras, El Santo Ludema. I can just go on and on. I was fortunate enough to watch all those guys, and I got to be in many, many important matches. Cinta de Oro versus Rocky Star, Mass versus Mass for November 1st, 1987. I was 10 years old, back then. And that's how I just fell in love with wrestling. I used to wait outside the auditorium to wait for the wrestlers when I was about 10, 11 years old. And I would ask them, hey, you think I can carry your bag? And then they would let me carry their bags. I would get in, they would go inside to the locker room, and I would just walk into the wrestling match, and I would just be there watching. So ever since I can remember, that was my passion. I never wanted to be a lawyer, a doctor, or nothing like that. Nothing against them, which is amazing that they do, because we need all that in our world. My dad's a lawyer, my brother's an electrical engineer. But for me, it was different. That's all I wanted to do. Wrestle. And I have a lot of great memories doing that. I used to wrestle outside in El Callejón, La Calle Níquel 16, in Ciudad Juarez. And I would jump from one of the roofs into my grandfather's hearses and cars, and I would do any crazy things as a young man.
Wow, and you know what? Let's jump into a question that, as I was going through, as far as like all your interviews, your shows, the things that you have done, like, wow, it's amazing. I wonder how that feels. How does it feel to have achieved your dream?
It's an amazing feeling when you think about it. Sometimes, like, people will ask me, like, how does it feel to be famous, or how does it feel to have so many followers on Instagram, or how does it feel to this? And I'm just like, to be honest, like, I just feel it's me, because I'm me, in that sense. But people look at you in a different light, in a different sense of the word, like we were saying. But for me, it's just an accomplishment, being able to do what I love, and I feel blessed that God gave me the talent to do what I do. Obviously, it's been a lot of obstacles throughout my career. It hasn't been easy. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't change anything in my life, because that had built my character to who I am now. I'm 43 years old now with two kids that I love very much. And I want to show them that everything in life takes hard work. And once you teach your kids, that's not easy. Then for me, it's something that I'm like, okay, everything that I've learned, now I'm teaching them. Then it makes it worth it for me. It's hard sometimes because we think that we want to make everything easy, but no, we need to teach our kids. They have to struggle sometimes, or they have to earn things. Because I remember that when my kid was younger, my daughter, I was like, I wanted to give him everything, which is awesome. But then at the end of the day, sometimes you just hurt them instead of helping them.
Wow, you bring up a really good topic because you're absolutely right. A lot of times, especially when maybe when we were kids, we didn't get a lot of material stuff. Mm-hmm. So now that we maybe have a little bit of money, or that we're at a different position, we think that they're gonna grow better if we give them everything. But the fact is, and it's already proven, that if we focus on that, guess what? It's gonna backfire 9 out of 10 times.
Exactly. So for me, my son, he's like, hey, Dad, can I wear the mask and certain things? I'm like, you gotta earn it now. Like, you're 12 years old, you got to start training. You got to focus on what you want. He's in that age where he understands a lot more things. When he was younger, I would let him do the meet and greets with me and with the mask. Today, I'm like, if you want to, because we have a show coming up, and he mentioned me, he's like, Dad, you think I can wrestle in the show? I was like, yeah, when you get older. I have to teach him, that everything takes time, and you got to teach him step by step. Not everything comes just one day here you are because your dad's a wrestler. Now you're in the ring. No. Because when he was 8 years old, we made a birthday party for him where he wrestled with me against 2 other friends of mine. So that was an amazing experience, but that was just for the birthday party. If you want to become a wrestler, then now it's something more serious. He's got to start training. He's got to focus on his eating and everything, or all his like small habits. As a kid, and nowadays I gotta say that for kids it's harder. It's not easy at all because you have all this
distraction.
Exactly, like television, social media, and now with the pandemics going on, and they're at home. What do? I get bored. All those little things, but you just got to be patient. You just got to be patient with them.
This mentality that you're talking about, where does it come from? Does it come from your parents, from your grandfather? I know he was very special as well. Where does this come from?
I think it's a perseverance. My family, in a sense, in a whole. My grandfather, the head of the table. He was a man that he was poor. He was a carpenter. He came to Juarez with nothing with my grandmother, and they built this amazing business. It's a funeral home. That's how I grew up. For me, it was normal. It was something that they never told, oh, that's bad, dead is bad. It was part of who we were. But I understood, from stories from him, from my grandmother, that they came from zero into having a lot, and gave him my uncles, my dad, the opportunity to succeed. My dad was a very hard worker. Also, he built a business. He went to school. He has a career in Mexico and a career in the United States.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So imagine that, learning English as an older man, becoming a citizen now. So and then my brother, he's an electrical engineer. My sister works for the El Paso. My mom works for the El Paso Independent School District. My sister works for the Socorros. So it's
really,
everybody's involved in many things, and my family has always been like hardworking, and they just want to achieve a lot of stuff. And for me, I look at that as an example. Doesn't matter how old I am. Doesn't matter how young I was. Like, I've always looked up to the people that that have done something positive, and I have an amazing family, an amazing support system, and I think it was taught from the head of the table. My grandfather, his name was Jose Arriaga Hernandez.
Wow. No, well, thank you for sharing that. I have a follow-up question now that you said that about your brother, about your dad. Did maybe your dad, your parents ever wanted you to go to school and get a degree opposed to following the path that you took?
Of course, my dad wanted me to have, like a backup plan in that sense. But he was never forceful of me, like, hey, you have to go to school because of this. Because the other thing he would always tell me, he was like, no matter what you do, you have a good and a bad consequence. It all depends on which one you want. So that those are the words that had always stuck in my head. It was like, I cannot be there with you 24/7. I cannot be there all the time, but this is what I can tell you. No matter what choice you take, it's gonna have a good or bad consequence. It depends on what you really want. So throughout my life, throughout my career, everything that I've done, I always thought about that. Like, you're right. Like, if something bad happens or there's a consequence, it's because I wasn't cautious enough to be able to have, a good consequence instead of a bad consequence. But there's things sometimes that you can't control either, So it's a little kind of in that sense. But overall, like that has been something that my dad, implemented in my life. But he never forced me to. You have to go to school. You have to do this. Well, I don't want you to be a wrestler. He loves what I do. He feels proud of what I've done. He's one of those people that I can talk to about anything, and he'll give me, what he thinks, and then let me be. He won't be like, oh, you have to do what I tell you. He'll tell me, and then he'll let me. It's like, it's your turn to decide what you want to do now.
Wow. And we'll go back to your family, because it's more than evident that, your parents did an awesome job. As I was going through your interviews, the things, I was like, not only is he super accomplished in what he does, but he's a very humble person. You accepting it, it's proof on that, for sharing your time. But we'll get into that. But that's something that I'm always curious on, as far as where does that come from? Of course, it's from your experience from life, but a lot of times it is from your parents and what we see as an example, and then we'll just take it from there and try to enhance that later on.
Exactly. You're bringing, definitely has a lot of influence in your life. And for me, like, obviously not everything was perfect. There was a lot of things that, throughout my career or my life, I was like, oh man, I wish we could change this, we could change that. But at the end of the day, I think my parents gave me the best opportunity to succeed in every sense of the word, I always had the choice. When I always get this when people say oh, it's because my dad wasn't there, my mom wasn't there, or this. I get it. It's not easy. It's hard. It's tough. I get everything. But it's your choice. If you want to take that bad choice, it's not on them anymore. It's on you. You're 20 years old now, 21. And now you can decide yourself if you want that lifestyle or you want to become better than them. So there's a lot of people that are still blaming on that. Oh, I'm an alcoholic because of that. No, you're maybe I don't know how that works, but maybe it's something that it's a disease, and maybe you've dealt with it, or maybe your parent dealt with it. But that doesn't have to mean that you have to be one either. You decide on that, and I think in everything that we do, we have a choice. I'm a believer in God. God gave us a choice. You want to be with me? You don't want to be with me? It's okay. So it's on you to decide what you want to do in your life. Good, bad, outstanding, extraordinary, however you want to put it. For me, the word extraordinary has been something that I've always strived for in everything that I've done. It's not something like, I'm going to put for example, a wrestling school. And for me, it would be easy just to get a warehouse and put a ring, and that's a wrestling school. I don't want that. I want it to be the best wrestling school that it can be. So that's why it's taking its time right now.
Wow. And we'll talk about your future projects as well. But you're absolutely right. And it's needed, especially at this time, right, that we see COVID. I was talking to Shane, to Rick, to a lot of people prior. As far as that, COVID is here. It's here. But if we take it as an excuse, something else is going to happen. And if we just are stuck with that mentality of blaming someone or something, guess what? We're never going to be able to make it happen. So again, you're the perfect example of someone that has work ethic and knows exactly the discipline and the sacrifice that it requires. Right now, we'll get into that subject a little bit more. But again, it's very welcoming to hear that from you.
Yeah, because a lot of people right now in these times, it's tough. I get it. It's hard. But everything is blamed on COVID now. Like, you call the Social Security office, oh, we don't have, because COVID. And this because of COVID, Dad. I'm like, come on, I get it. But, we got to start blaming COVID for everything. Now it's time for us as human beings to take action in our lives, and we want to accomplish and we want to do. Obviously, you got to be careful. You got to take the precautions necessary to what we need to do. Put your face mask on, wash your hands, wherever you go, get tested, all that stuff. I get it. But we got to continue living. We got to stop being in fear. Today I went to church and they talk about that, but being in fear. We got to stop being in fear. We got to take action of our lives that we want to accomplish, that we want to do now. I think it's been 9 months already, and, the world was at a halt for 3-4 months, and we were going crazy. I'm still going crazy right now. I want to start wrestling again, So it's one of those things that obviously, has changed our world and everything that we've done. But I think it's for the better too.
Yeah, no, definitely. And again, everything makes sense when you talk to successful people that have made their passion, in this case, what you do for a living. It's always that common denominator, right? That it's my passion. This is what I want. And when they had those difficult scenarios, they still stuck to it. They were
Exactly.
still willing to sacrifice where
Perseverance
other
is the word.
people
Yeah.
were not, right?
Perseverance, perseverance
Yes,
is
sir.
a word that sometimes we don't really use a lot. We always say like keep going and don't give up. But perseverance is a word that that tells you to keep going, that never stop, that no matter what happens in your way, you got to continue moving forward. No matter what happens, you got to look at the goal, la meta, seguir a la meta, to look at that. And sometimes as men, what do we see? We think that's it. It's more than that. Our vision has to be way past that. And it's harder because, things are getting harder in our lives and everything that we do. But, it's, I think, and for me, in taking a leap of faith when I was in this amazing company and then now being an independent wrestler, like my vision was different than what people thought it was. They in their minds, they were like, oh, he's asking for his release from the biggest company in the world, WWE. He's making all this money. He's traveling the world. Why is he doing this? Their vision was not my vision. That's the difference.
Yeah, and that you're still, able, and you, of course, you did it to follow your own path, regardless of what was the noise. Outside of that, we'll get to that. But that's one of the things that, thinking about it, this is what we need. Again, maybe someone that is not in wrestling, but how many people you don't know that maybe they're stuck on a job that they don't want, that they don't like, that we always complain about something. And you, in this case, making steady income, a lot of money. A very comfortable position, if you want to say. And you're still like, guess what? This is not my path. I'm going to take it, be it. And I'm like, oh, my God, that's
yeah, man,
that's a different level.
It wasn't easy because I got people that depend on me. Not just my family, not just my kids, not just, the people that I love, but also the guy that makes my boots. Oh. The guy that makes my mask. My mechanic, where I go eat, where I go wash my car, where I buy my clothes, everything, that surrounds me depended on me having a steady income. And sometimes we don't look at it in that way. We just look at it in the sense like, oh, I'm going to make this money. Now I'm not making no money. Like, oh, no, I don't want that. I didn't want to be in that place where I wasn't happy anymore. Nothing against it, I was blessed enough to be there for 10 years, but as much as they gave me, I gave more than what they gave me. I gave them my life. I gave them my body. My body's broken because of that. And it's not an excuse, and I'm not like, oh, pobrecito, Cinta de Oro. No, none of that. It was my choice, so I understand that. But at the end of the day, I needed to move on. I needed to have a drastic change in my personal life and in my career. And it wasn't easy letting go of that because it's hard to let go of something that you already had, that you worked so hard for, but it wasn't what you wanted. That's the hardest thing to really understand. There's a story about a little girl. I just remember. I'm going to make it quick.
No,
It was about this young lady goes to downtown with her mom, and she sees what's it called? Las Perlas, a pearl necklace. And the mom tells, yeah, they said, I'll buy it for you, but let's do this. You got to help me at the house. And if you help me, I'll give you money. And then you raise so much money and you can come buy it. So the little girl goes home and she's all excited and helps her mom and everything that she needs, her shirts, whatever. She gets the money, she buys the necklace. She goes home, she uses the necklace on everything. And all of a sudden, one day the dad comes in and is like, hey, you love me? And then the daughter's like, yeah, Dad, I love you. And so they start talking, whatever. It's like, oh, that's a beautiful necklace you have there. And then Dad's like, can you give it to me? And then the little girl's like, please, Dad, I just bought it. It's my favorite. So then a few days pass, right? Same thing. The little girl was like very enthusiastic about it, wearing her necklace all the time. And then the dad comes home one day and asks her the same thing. He's like, you love me? He's like, yes, Dad, I love you. He's like, can I have your necklace? And the little girl was like, no, please, Dad. I'll give you my dolls. I give you my toys, whatever you want. And then the dad goes away. Same thing happens, right? And then all of a sudden, a couple of days later, he's in his bedroom watching television. And then this little girl comes in crying and starts crying. And the dad's like, what's wrong? He's like, I'm sorry, Dad. You've given me life. You've given me everything that I have. And I couldn't give you this necklace of pearls that it's fake. I'm so sorry. So then the little girl takes it off and gives it to the dad. And then the dad puts his hand in his pocket and takes out a necklace of real pearls and gives it to her. So sometimes what we have is not really the real thing till we let it go. Then you realize that God's gonna give you what is real. But it's so hard to let go of that.
Yeah.
It's really hard to
Wow.
let go of
Well,
that.
thank you for sharing that story. It's just another way to get that perspective on things that sometimes we lose sight.
Exactly.
So, Senor, we'll come back to that for sure. Let's go back to your beginning in wrestling.
Yeah.
You grew up in Segundo Barrio, Burgess High School, Texas State champion with a record of 35-0, extremely impressive. What do you remember from those days?
Well, I wasn't raised. I was born first in El Segundo Barrio. Actually, Segundo Barrio, Newark Clinic, and the building's still there. And let me tell you a little story.
Go for it.
Yesterday, I was we were going out of the house with my son and my daughter, and then my son asked me, "Dad, can you take me where you grew up?" I'm like, "What do you mean, like Segundo Barrio?" He's like, "Yeah, can you take me?" I'm like, "You've been there before." He's like, "Yeah, but I don't remember. I want to go again." So we took a little stroll yesterday in El Segundo Barrio by Armijo, by Boys and Girls Club, Haushin. I showed them where I was born and Newark Clinic. The building's still there. Now it's Haushin. It's like a daycare for kids. So for me as a little kid, I was born there. I grew up there. I lived in 1009 South St. Brain, apartment B. You still remember
that?
I still remember. I lived on 618 Tornillo. Used to be my grandmother's house. And as a young kid, I was there. Like any other kid, I played baseball. I played football. I played basketball also for Alamito against Salazar, against Sherman, all those project, little teams that we had back in the day, and so it was a lot of fun, It was a lot of fun, and it taught me a lot. Also, it wasn't easy. Segundo Barrio it's not what it is now. Back in the day, it was El Segundo Barrio, where everybody talks about, the drive-bys, the fights, the Barrio against Barrio, all those things that happened before. And I grew up around all that, but like I was telling you before, my dad would always tell me, no matter what you do, you have a good or bad consequence. So I never drank, never did drugs. I would get in fights because I would have to defend myself. That was about it. But it taught me a lot about myself, that I could, that I could throw down, like they say, So
when you were showing your son around, what were some of the things that you were telling him?
I would tell him like this is where I used to come and play, basketball at the rec center and Boys and Girls Club. And he's like, what do you do there? He's never been to a Boys and Girls Club. I'm sorry, guys, I have never taken him. But he didn't understand the concept of it. I was like, well, this is where he used to come play basketball or pool or other things, because at home we didn't have that, And I got an opportunity to show him Armijo. We went to Armijo, to the library, to show him where the pool was, everything that I used to do when I was a little kid, and show him the murals. What do they mean? How come, like, why are there so many projects around Segundo Barrio? I was like, because this is a low income community. It's not because. And then I was explaining to him all that stuff, like, and comparing in that sense, like, now you're blessed. You go to private school. You go to this. You do that. So take advantage of that. I went to public school and I'm fine. I'm perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with it. But if I can give you something better, then I'm gonna do it. That's what I told him. And he's like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. And I took him to see a lot of things and a lot of the little streets where I used to hang out.
Wow, so I can just imagine how that feels, right? How that felt.
A lot of memories came back. Definitely as a young kid, when I used to get in like fights and getting my butt kicked a few times, but I learned. You learn, and and it builds character.
That's the only way, and it definitely does. So let's go ahead and talk about Burgess High School, undefeated state champion. I know that there was maybe some issues that you had there, but then I want to spend some time talking about after high school. You went to college, right? And then tell us what happened in your in college experience.
Well, I was in 1995. I was a junior. I ended up getting third in state. My senior year, I was voted the MVP of the state tournament. But before that, in November, my grandfather passed away. My grandfather, November 20th of 1995. The wrestling season had already started, and I was depressed when my grandfather passed away. He was one of those people that was like a big supporter of what I was doing, and I wanted to make him proud. So I remember my coach telling me, you know what, if you don't want to wrestle this year, I get it. Nothing against it. But it was my senior year. I had worked, those 3 years prior to achieve something that, not many had accomplished for Burgess High School. So I remember I was about 4 or 5 weeks. And then I told my coach, you know what, I'm ready. I'm ready to get back in wrestling. So I was like, all right, come back. So I remember wrestling in the first tournament. It was at Bel Air. And I wrestled a couple weights up of the class that I was wrestling at 135. I think I wrestled 145 that tournament. I won the tournament, and then I went down to my weight class and wrestled the whole year at 135. So then I was cutting 17 pounds in a week.
In a week.
Wow. But back in the day, we were not as educated in health issues and health matters. Like nowadays, kids tend to be in diets and learn all this macro stuff and amazing things. Back in the day, it was just like hardcore, like wear the plastic bag and go cut weight, don't eat much and this and that. But it wasn't like now. And so I was doing that, and then to make the short story, in February of 1996. 3-day tournament in Abilene, Texas. I lose. No, it was in Dallas. Abilene was my junior year. I won state. I was undefeated, 35-0. Wrestled against Dan Fisher. He was 32-0, 3-time state returning state play winner, and I ended up pinning him in overtime.
In overtime,
yeah. And so I won the MVP of that tournament also with another kid from Caprac, Martina Podaca. We were the only Latinos or Mexican kids to win state that year, and both of us were voted the most outstanding wrestlers of the state tournament. Then I went to college from there. I went to wrestle for Western New England College.
Which is where?
Today, it's called Western New England University, which is in Springfield, Massachusetts. Yeah. Springfield, Massachusetts, it's a city where the Basketball Hall of Fame is at. They say where basketball was invented in Springfield College, which is 10 minutes down from where I used to go to school. So I went there because I was recruited by Pete Maldonado. And he was a Puerto Rican wrestler that represented Puerto Rico in the Pan Am Games and Los Juegos Centroamericanos. He was a medalist. He had an amazing career. He was also a Marine. And he recruited a couple of guys from Burgess years prior. Jesse Almodoro, who was the coach for Franklin High School for many years. Eddie Garcia, now he lives in San Francisco, but I still have communication with him. And then Pete recruited me. It was a Division III school. I wanted to wrestle. I got recruited by a couple of schools that were military, but I wasn't really fond of them, so I ended up going over there, getting grants. The school would help me out a little and things like that. And then I tear my ACL my freshman year. That was my first injury ever. Freshman year, I ended up getting homesick, being injured. Then my parents were getting divorced.
It was within that same time.
Yeah, all those things were happening at the same time. I was away from home. I felt alone, and I went through a period of depression. I didn't know what it was because I never felt that before. Now I can say it was depression, and I ended up trying to commit suicide as a 19-year-old kid, being away from home, not knowing what to do, not talking to people because I was always, keeping a lot of things to myself. So I ended up doing that when I was in college. And I remember waking up in the hospital. I drank the pills and a bottle of NyQuil. Wow. The whole bottle. And then the last thing I remember is that I got into the shower because I was feeling bad. And then the last thing was when I woke up in the hospital. And when I woke up in the hospital, my college coach was next to me crying. And I was like, and I had no idea what was going on because I was still in medication or whatever. And then he told me, he's like, you should have told me, you should have talked to me, that you felt this way, that you were not right, and I could have helped you. But I didn't know how to look for help. I was away from home. My parents were getting divorced. I wasn't really one of those people that had opened up to people to let them know how I felt. It was weird, and I was in a place where I didn't feel loved because 99% of the school was Anglo. Güeros, gringos, white people. So it was tough in that sense. It was the first time that I ever experienced racism.
Really?
Yeah. So it was a lot of things that joined together, but God had a purpose for me. That day, I thank God that nothing happened. I was able to recover, and then started going to church with him. He invited me to church, and I started going to church in Massachusetts. And I used to tell my coach, you're like, okay, I'm going to go to your church, but don't try to change me because I'm not going to change you. This is who I am, and I grew up in a Catholic home, whatever. So I ended up, after the first year, he ended up not coming back with the second year. And I told him, why not? It's like, I'm gonna go study to become a pastor. I was like, what? So he left all of a sudden. So I ended up going back to school. And then the coach that was there before came back again. So me and him never clicked. So I ended up leaving the school after my second year, came back to El Paso, Juarez, started working with my dad. And that's when I started training for professional wrestling when I was 22 years old.
Well, thank you for sharing. I just quickly want to go back Looking back at this event, what are some of the things that you could have done different to avoid that situation? Talk to someone. What is something that maybe
I think
someone needs to hear?
communication is the key. Sometimes as we grow up or when we tend to go through things, we keep it to ourselves, you know, and that's what I've learned throughout my life. Now that I've gotten older, that I've been through things, that I went through a divorce, that I went through, you know, things that are not pleasant. I've been able to communicate with my friends, with the people that I love, to express how I feel. And it's nothing wrong just because we're a man to express, you know, how you feel, if you're sad or if you want to cry, or nothing wrong with that. Because we grew up with that mentality of like, oh, you're a man, eres hombre, you shouldn't cry, you should be tough. Yeah, I'm tough. I'm tough. You can ask anybody, I'm tough. But I also have a heart. And my heart feels, and my heart cries, and like anybody else. And I think for me, that was the biggest lesson. To understand that in life, we're all human. It's okay to cry. It's okay to feel. I'm not a machine. And sometimes as men, or because we're jacked, or because we're this, or because we're that, we tend to keep it to ourselves because we don't want to show them that we're weak. And that's not weakness.
Especially in our culture.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
It's not weakness. That's not true. So whoever tells you that that's not true, if you hit yourself and you want to cry, it's okay. Yeah. Nothing wrong with it.
And it can arguably be the opposite, that when you communicate, that's where you show your true strength.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, nothing wrong with it. So now I've learned that, you know, that taught me a lot, and also made me communicate with my parents more, you know, and value what I have, value life, and understand that everything has a, what is it called? Una solución.
Mm-hmm.
Una respuesta. Oh, yeah. An answer, yeah. And they say the only thing that doesn't have an answer is death. But even death, if you believe in God, has an answer. So it depends on how you look at it, you know? And for me, that's been life experience that made me, you know, go through many things. And when I was going through a lot of struggle, when I was going through a lot of problems, it kept me going. I was like, everything has an answer. Maybe not what I want, or not at the time that I want it, but it'll come.
Wow. I'm so glad that you're talking about this, because a lot of people, like, this is maybe not something new that I'm sure a friend, someone close maybe talks about, but seeing someone like you, that very successful, that has all these lights behind him and everything else, go through the same thing, hopefully it impacts someone that might need it. So again, thank you for sharing your story, Senor. So let's go back. So you come back to El Paso, and this is when you start training to be a professional wrestler, right? Talk to us a little bit about your experience training. I know it was difficult, it was hard. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, when it was with Victor Ojeda. He passed away this past year.
El Pirata, right?
El Pirata, yeah. He just passed away a few months ago, and it was tough, you know, because as a young man, you think that you're going to go training, and you're going to go training in a wrestling ring. You know, that was my first thing. Oh, vamos a ir al ring, and we're going to go train. I get to this little room in El Neri Santos, and it's just a small room, about probably like 8 by 8, with the pallets and carpet. And that's how I learned how to bump and learn how to wrestle. For a year and a half, I was like that. We would train outside in El Auditorio. We would run, do all conditioning stuff. And then we would go and take bumps on the pallets. So I never had the experience of learning on a ring till about a year and a half. They would take us every Friday, but the price would be you would have to go Monday through Thursday. And if you missed a day, you wouldn't go on Friday to to a small arena, la Coliseo, a la Olímpica, to train the ropes, to train in the ring. So we all wanted to go during the week to be able to go on a Friday. And I ended up doing about 6 months of it. And then one day in 1999, my coach, Victor Ojeda El Pirata, said, hey, you're going to do your debut. And I think it was around September, October, when he told me. So look for a name and then get yourself an outfit. And then we're going to make the test to see if you can become a professional wrestler. And I was like, man, like, this is amazing. But I used to tell him, like, I'm not ready yet.
After a year and a half, you were still like,
yeah. No,
was it because you were nervous about it?
It was about 2 years now by then. And I used to tell him, like, I'm not ready. I was like, yeah, you're ready. Like, you've been wrestling since you were 14 years old. You've done amateur, you've done college wrestling. Now you've done, you trained professional. I was like, no, I think I still need more. He's like, no, you don't need any more. If you got to learn, you got to learn inside the ring. So I ended up getting my license and everything. And then I used to have this crazy dream. I've told it a few times where I was wrestling in this building, but it had the symmetry of the wrestling ring, and I was wrestling El Hijo del Santo. So every time I would, like, he would drop kick me, I would take a bump and I would go down like 100 floors, take a bump, and then I would come up again like that. Had the dream for 3-4 months, I remember, before I debuted it.
And this was a recurring dream. Wow.
Mm-hmm. I debuted November 21st of 1999 as Místico. El primero y original, esa palabra no había existido en el vocabulario de la lucha. It had never existed. But later on in life, I'll give you a little history. I found out that there used to be a Místico in La Laguna, like in the 50s and 60s.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Esa no me la sabía.
Okay. Exactly. So.
Wow, but the name you got originally, it didn't. You were not copying no one.
Oh no! I had no idea that existed till a few years back.
Wow.
That I did a little bit of searching
of
history, because I also love what I do. So I'm a historian about what I love. So.
Señor, the way you describe names, dates, I'm like, oh my God, I'm trying not to call you Cinta, Sin Cara, and I'm like, you're already throwing names, numbers, and everything. That's great. Now, as Místico, by the way, I honestly think that's such a great name, by the way. Yeah. We'll talk about you having to change that a little bit. Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask that question now. How long were you wrestling as Místico when you heard that, hey, someone else is using the name or is going to use the name?
Almost 5 years now.
Almost 5 years.
It was 2004 when we heard that this new, persona is coming out in Mexico. And a lot of the wrestlers, a lot of my friends thought it was me. They came from Mexico, and they would tell me, hey, are you going to Mexico? Are you going to? I'm like, no, it's not me, not that I know of. So unfortunately, as a young kid, you don't realize that there's a lot of politics and everything, and I never registered the name. I could prove that I was Místico for many years, but I didn't have
pictures.
No tenía esto. I didn't have the money to go on a legal battle for years for the name. It was tough. And I remember El Hijo del Santo came down and he told me once, like, hey, well, you have everything to fight for the name. And I told him, you know what? Let me tell you this. I know you're not gonna believe me, but if something belongs to me, God one day will give it back to me. And I have the best lawyer in the world, and that was it. And then many years later, something happened in WWE that we'll talk about later.
Yeah, we will,
where
for sure.
They call it divine justice.
Yeah, we'll talk about that as well. But it's just something that I know it's really important, because I'm just thinking about, okay, I open up my hair salon, On Point Hair Salon, and then within, I don't know, 3-5 years, hey, guess what? You're going to have to change your name because there's another one. Like, what?
Exactamente, imagínate.
And I'm like, so how were you able to deal with that? How long was the process que dijiste? I know that you said that eventually you just moved on. But I'm pretty sure that at that time, they're taking your baby from you.
Yeah, it was tough. I was 26, 27 years old when that happened. And it was tough. But I understood that you have to let go of things sometimes, and let him go and let him loose. And know that God has a purpose. Then again, for me, it's been faith, For other people, it's whatever they believe in. That's perfect. But for me, it has been my faith in God and what I believe in. And I knew that God gave me a talent and I had a purpose in life, and I was like, that's not going to determine who I am. I'm going to determine what I want in my life. And if I remember that I used to tell God, just, you open the doors and I'll knock him down. That's all I told him. I would tell him all the time, open the door and I will knock it down no matter what happens. The name is not going to determine what I want to accomplish, who I want to be, because at the end of the day, it's my talent. It's me under the mask. And that's how I kept going. It was tough. And there were times that I wanted to just throw the towels. Like we say, and the hell with politics and this and that. I don't want to go through this. I don't need none of this, because I can go to school. I can do this. I can that. But I was like, it was my dream. I wasn't going to let it go just because somebody else thought that something belonged to them. I was going to show them that I did not need none of that.
And that you were going to make it happen
regardless.
And you go into my next question, actually. Before you get that call for WWE to try out, were there any times that you wanted to quit wrestling altogether?
There's a few times, obviously. And then my mom would tell me, my mom was the one that got most frustrated. She would be like, you should just quit. You should just go to school, finish your school, or you have a career already. You can have this, you can have that. Because she would see me struggle without a car, without money, without clothes, without a place to stay. As a 26, 27-year-old, still trying to make it. It was tough. And I told my mom that year, I was like, you know what? If I don't make it in a year, then I'll listen to you. I'll just quit this or wrestle once in a while, and I'll focus on my career and having a normal job. But I told her, just let me have this one chance. Let me have this one chance because I don't want to be older and saying like coulda, woulda, shoulda. That doesn't exist. So let me try it. If it doesn't work, then I'll move on. But thank God that it worked out for me. You know, that I got an opportunity to start wrestling for Ring of Honor, Chihuahua, NWA, Fuerza Mexicana Lucha Libre, a lot of local promoters here, many places that I started, you know, getting myself noticed with a different name. It wasn't Mystico anymore because a lot of the doors were blocked because of the name. But at the end of the day, I understood that sense. So I ended up wrestling as incognito for many of those companies.
It was Místico de Juarez at first and then Incognito?
Era Místico de Juarez, but then people didn't want to book me yet because they were Místico. It was
Místico. Still a connection.
Exactly. Okay. So I ended up switching to Incognito when I debuted for AAA in 2005.
And then this is what happened. Okay, so then Incognito, and then you start wrestling. You moved to Monterrey.
Me fui a Monterrey.
Talk to us about your time in Monterrey. I know a lot of things happened over there, by the way.
Yeah, in Monterrey, I was studying. I was studying in theology of all things. I was going to a school called Christ for the Nations. There's one in Dallas, one in Argentina, and one in Monterrey, Mexico. And I was going there to become an evangelist. And so I was wrestling at the same time, and I was going to school. So I remember I used to go to school in the morning, and in the afternoons I would wrestle Laredo, Reynosa, Matamoros, Rio Bravo, Monterrey. And that's how I was sustaining myself economically to pay for the school, to pay for my food, for, you know, where I was living. And then I came back like less than a year later to El Paso. I broke my hand. My mom she had surgery, but throughout that time, I went through a lot of things through also in the church and the people that I was having, you know, being a part of. You know, I got expelled from church because I was a young man and I took a bad decision, and they ended up just kicking me out. It was tough, man.
How were you able to deal with that? I mean, you're still at a young age.
Yeah, I used to ask I used to tell Pastor Lechuga, que le mando un saludo, that from Juarez. I was like, man, like, what is it says in the Bible that you know, that when you make a mistake, they have the authority to kick you out. How come they didn't help me? Why? And then he was like, there's nothing in the Bible that says that, but the only thing that I can tell you is that God loves you. He used to tell me all the time.
And you know, that's what helped you get through.
Yeah, I went through a lot, and I went through that. But at the same time, you know, all those lessons taught me a lot of myself. I understood that, like I was saying before, God had a purpose in my life. You know, everything that I've done. But and then again, I understood that I took a wrong decision, and that had a bad consequence.
Okay, so it was not blaming someone else.
No,
it was
never.
You, and then moving on.
All I wanted was to get help by the people that I loved.
Wow, so interesting.
And it didn't happen. And then, but I didn't blame them. To this day, I don't blame them either. If I see them, I say, hi, how you doing? You know, same thing, like nothing happened. Because it was my choice. It wasn't their choice.
Wow, that mindset. Now, did you always believe in your talent? Because I was just telling me that you struggled, that maybe you were thinking of maybe quitting. But it sounds like since the beginning, you always believed in yourself. I mean, aside from the goal that you had that, you know what, you were not going to waver, you were going to make it happen. But you also believed in yourself, that you were talented, your work ethic,
yes.
all that.
Yes, always. Always. I understood as a young age that I had the talent to do what I loved, you know. Because at 18 years old, I was already one of the top wrestlers in the nation. This Latino kid from El Paso. It wasn't popular. Wrestling wasn't popular with us.
No.
Here in Texas, now it is. Back in the day, it wasn't. I'm talking about 20-something years ago. That's crazy. So for me, it was one of those things that I knew that I had the talent to achieve a lot of things, and I would always prove myself by wrestling other guys that they were already legends, they were already established in the business in Mexico and other parts of the world. They would always, you know, at the same time give me props of like my job and what I did. Hey man, where you from? And they were like surprised of what I could do.
Wow, that recognition, that's what helped you throughout continuing that, because you knew you had it.
The recognition of my peers was, I think, the thing that kept me going in that sense. Without them knowing, that was keeping me going in that sense, because I was going through a struggle inside myself, you know, like my name was taken away from me, so what do I do now? And then all of a sudden in 2008, El Hijo del Santo calls me.
He's and like, you were fighting as incognito.
As incognito. He comes, hey, I'm going to go to Europe, to London, and we're going to have a tour in London for 3 days. Do you want to come? It was in July. And I was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. Like let's do it. So I ended up going with him and his wife, Gabriela Obregón. We wrestle. It's called Lucha Libre London now, the company. And we wrestled 4 times in 3 days. And I ended up wrestling against him as a heel. I was doing the heel work and el rudo, no? And he was just amazed at what I could do in the ring, as a performer and everything. And I remember that we came back, and then in December of 2008, we went again. He told me, we're going to have another tour. So after that, I went again in December. We finished the tour. As soon as the tour was done during the show, he called me up into his dressing room. He's like, hey, can you come over? And so I went over. He's like, yeah, how you doing? He's like, I just want to congratulate you for this tour, for being with us, and I want to give you he gave me his mask as a gift. He's like, and I'm not giving it to you because you're an amazing wrestler. I'm giving it to you because you're a great person, and that's why I really appreciate it, that your ethic, your hard work, and everything. And he autographed it for me.
Wow.
And then he gave it to me, and then I came back, and then a week later, my son was born.
And all this within
a
couple of months, a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Wow. How did you feel when you got that mask? I know you were...
Ahí lo tengo. Still there.
Tienes?
Yeah, it's still there. And
very emotional.
Yeah,
sure.
very emotional. I remember the one that I used that day, I gave it to him also, and I still remember what I told him. I told him, like, for him and his wife, I signed it. I was like, thank you for believing. You made me believe in myself again. That's what I told him.
Wow.
Both of them, and they still have it too, the mask. I should have a picture around there. I'll probably post it later. I'll send it to you so you can show it. And I just realized that there was a lot of things that I still could do. That was 2008, and then during that time, I also got a call from AAA, and I told him that I would call him, but I never called back.
Why?
I don't know. I don't think it was my time to wrestle with him. And a year later, I was wrestling in the indie circuit, and then I got to wrestle X-Pac, Sean Walkman, a few times. And sure enough, he was the one that recommended me with WWE in December of 2009. He was the one that actually got me a tryout for WWE.
Wow, that story is so amazing. Yeah. And definitely we're going to move on to WWE now, your decade there. But let me ask you something. When was the moment that you remember, like, I made it? I finally made it.
Well, in wrestling, it's hard to say, to be honest.
I'm sure there was maybe several.
But obviously, like, if you were gonna pinpoint a moment, was when I got out of my tryout in December of 2009
in Fort Worth,
in Laredo,
okay.
Laredo, Texas. I had a meeting with John Laurinaitis. He was like, "Hey, how you doing?" He told me that. Hey, so you think you're better than Rey Mysterio? He asked me that, and I was like, you know what? Like, I don't know if I'm better than him, but I can tell you maybe I can do things that he can't do. I was like, just give me a shot, and you'll know. So when I got out of the meeting, it's like, well, we're gonna give you a shot and see if you go back home or whatever. So once I got out of the meeting, they told me like that they were gonna give me a contract right there. So that's the time that I knew, like, man, like, this is real. This is not no talk no more.
Because your dream, even though it was wrestling, but it was always been WWE, right?
Yeah, because the guys that came before us, Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, Psicosis, Héctor Garza, Halloween, like Nicho el Millonario, Silver King, Los Villanos, all those guys that did the transition into WCW back in the day motivated us that we could do something like that too. You know? And if you see later on, a lot of those guys became the stars for WWE. Eddie Guerrero, Chris Jericho. A lot of people don't like to say this name, but Chris Benoit, you know, all those guys. And they paved the way for us. So that's when I knew that, like, man, it's not only Mexico that I can make it. There's another place that I can make it in.
So being bilingual, I mean, that definitely helps out tremendously as well. And having that, I mean, growing up in the border, watching Mexican wrestlers, and guess what? Also watching American wrestling. So, of course, I could just imagine. And that happened after how many years of career? 10 years?
10 years. I was already wrestling for 10 years in the independent circuit. I had never signed a contract with any company, nor AAA, nor Consejo, nobody. And that was my first actual contract when I got home. In December, I had my contract like in the beginning of the year, January of 2010. I already had it in my hand, and I did the whole deal. My first day with WWE was February 22nd of 2010 for FCW. It was called Florida Championship Wrestling, which was the
development program.
The development program, but it wasn't like nowadays. Nowadays it's awesome. It's its own brand, you know. For back in the day, it was like the little small company, el patito feo, no?
That's what it was.
The WWE. I would have to. We had to get what is it called? Like teams to go put the posters up in the street.
So you were basically working for your stay there.
Yeah, like that. We would set up the ring. We would go have like a poster day. Set up the posters. One time I should remember a story. I got in trouble with Steve Kern because later on they put like a list on the wall and then you would volunteer. And one day I went back because I was already on the main roster and filled out the list with all the names like guys that would never do it, like Bray Wyatt, Roman Reigns, and all those guys.
You were filling up their names.
So they knew that it was fake. So I get a call from Steve Kern like, "Hey, why you messing with my lesson?" And then later on, I went to say, "You know what? I'm sorry." It's like, "Nah, don't worry about it. I'm the first guy to prank people, so I understand. But I just had to give you a hard time because of this and that." But yeah, I went through the whole deal, man.
Oh, that's so cool. How long did it take you in the development program before you developed the character of Único, or what was the
Único con enmascarado. It was the same outfit as Místico and Incógnito. And I was there for about a year and a half, about a year and 7 months. And then this kid from Mexico, el Místico, el que ya le habían dado el nombre, comes and gets signed by the company. And they make this big press conference in Mexico, the next big star. Firmamos a la estrella más grande del mundo ahorita. And they gave him the name Sin Cara. So then they asked me, like, do you have any? I'm like, no.
Because they knew already your story, the background.
Knew a little bit about that. I was like, no. I'm not in conflict with my job. I love what I do. And if I have to wrestle him, let's do it. I'm here to make money. I'm here to showcase my talent. And if he's going to come here, it's my opportunity to shine.
Yeah.
Use that to shine.
To feel you as well.
Exactly.
I'm sure that at first, before you had that mindset, though, I mean, here comes a Mexican wrestler. You wrestle in Mexico. Like, great name, by the way, and all the backup that he's getting. And you're like, oh, I'm here. I did my 10 years, whatever.
And now again.
And this guy comes, and again, it's going to take my name, my persona as wrestling.
See, but I mean, it was different. I was a little more mature now. So he starts working, and then 2 months later, he gets suspended as soon as he got in. And that's where I came in. To fill out his shoes, and I was wrestling as Sin Cara, and then he came back because they wanted him to succeed so bad, because they had invested so much in him. So I think it was the first big signing done by Triple H, and he wanted to show Vince that he could take care of the company, that he could bring in talent, and so then this guy's just. He doesn't do well. They keep giving him opportunity after opportunity.
So you were saying that you were already fighting, in the development program already as Único, a year and a half, I believe, maybe a year. That's when Sin Cara, the mystical, comes to play the Sin Cara role. Sure. Talk to us as far as the first time you were substituting him. Was it... Did they tell you were only going to substitute him until he gets back? I know he was suspended. Or they just told you, guess what, you're taking over the character?
No, they didn't really tell me anything. They just told me you're being called up to the main roster. You're going to do Sin Cara, and that was it. I didn't really have an idea what was going on, if he was coming back, if I was going to continue, or it was just for a few dates. If he came back, I had no idea, no clue of what was going to happen, to be honest.
And then what happened? When is it that they told you, you know what, he's back, you're going to now do Sin Cara Negro? When did that happen?
When he was about to come back, that's when I really got to know a little bit about what's going on with one of the writers. Like, yeah, we want to continue the story with you and him, and you're going to become the black Sin Cara. We need you to, do a black outfit, like insane, but black. And I was like, all right. So I ended up, like, doing that, but they never really told me ahead of time, like, that they wanted him to actually just take over. I thought it was gonna be a continuation of us throughout some time, because I don't think there's ever been like a heel with a mask in the league that has sustained itself for a long period of time. So I thought that's what they wanted to do.
Okay, and what happens when you find out that does not happen?
We had live television in Mexico City during that day. It was in 2011. And they had a meeting before the show, before SmackDown, where the agents, Vince, and them gets together to go over the show, and they decided that it was time for me to move on, from Sin Cara Black, because they wanted him to obviously keep the character and keep shining. It was Mexico City. They wanted him to go over in a sense. So when that happened, I remember Arn Anderson, which he's always been very good to me. He now works for AEW as an agent. He tells me, "I'm sorry, kid. I tried. And I was like, what do you mean? It's like, yeah, well, we had a meeting. And I told him straight out that they were taking the mask out of the wrong guy. Like, I'm sorry, I tried. So then that happens. I move on, from the Sin Cara and become Único without a mask for about a couple of years. During that time, he was continuing as Sin Cara or whatever. And then, but throughout that time, I got injured. I left for about 9 months. And then throughout that time, he kept missing dates. He kept doing things that supposedly this, supposedly that, because he was playing the system. No matter what happens, we would get paid by week. So I was like, oh, I get hurt, so he wouldn't come wrestle and things like that. And then all of a sudden, I got a call from the company when I was coming back from my injury. If I wanted to take over the Sin Cara character, and I was like in shock. I was like, "What do you mean?"
Now, honestly, now you have your question. Now I'm taking over the whole character.
Yeah,
right?
I was like, we had a meeting today, and the boss says if you want to take over the character, he's more than willing to give it to you and go all on board with you. And I was like, let's do it. So,
well, no doubts.
Yeah.
Automatically say, you know what? Because
yeah.
for you, I know that having a mask has always been since the beginning your goal, what you wanted to do. So now that they offer you that, no doubts, I wanted to go and jump into that.
Exactly. It was one of those. And then like, you know how in the movies, like the little film goes like, your life. That's how my life went, like from the beginning until now. And I was like, couldn't believe it. And then all of a sudden, like, we go on tour, in Europe tour, and I was still wrestling as Único. When I came back from the tour, December of 2013, that's when I debuted as Sin Cara again with the mask on. And he was eating some tacos in Mexico City. He tweeted out.
Wow. That's so funny. Now, let me ask you this. At this point, did you already as a wrestler knew kind of his reputation, the flops? I know he maybe... he didn't adapt it to the American style. Did you already know that you were starting not from zero, but maybe from negative?
Yeah, of course.
You knew this.
I knew everything. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but I was up to the challenge. I knew that it wasn't, sometimes people had a perspective of the character of what was going on, that he never, like you were saying, he never adapted to the styles, because in Mexico, he's been so used to wrestling with the same people all the time. You get, como dice, tan casaditos, the same guys. And over here, you got to wrestle everybody. Big Show, Orton, Cena, The Ascension, all those guys had to work with everybody. And no matter who it is, you got to adapt to. If you're a great wrestler, you're going to wrestle with anybody. And he wasn't like that. He would only wrestle with certain people. And I think another thing that affected him was the barrier language. He never wanted to learn English.
Why was that? I mean, I
don't know. I think it's the mentality. It's one of those things like maybe he didn't have the mentality to really focus on that, or he never wanted. I don't know. One of those things like everybody has their own thoughts, but I think sometimes they categorize wrestlers in that sense, like, oh, es mexicano, no quiere aprender, It's not true. A lot of us want to learn. Andrade has learned English, Now he's dating Charlotte. Obviously, that helps a lot. but it's true, And Alberto Del Rio, he didn't learn English. He learned it over here when he was in WWE. So it's one of those things, like, it's just a matter of the person and what do you want to accomplish and who do you want to become. And I think he was, like, a lot of things were given to him in that sense that he never really...
He never worked on it, right?
Exactly.
Because he came as a superstar and maybe thought that was going to be the same treatment.
And unfortunately, And unfortunately for him, it didn't work out, yeah.
Wow, and good for you. And in this case, you already knew that kind of the problems that you were going to face at the beginning. You took the challenge right on.
Because a lot of people would, like, when I created my Twitter account or whatever, I would always get all these tweets from fans like, hey, I was like, no, man, you got the wrong guy. This is the guy that you're talking about. And I would always tag him. But it came to a point that I was like, I don't need to answer to all those people, Like, who knows? Who doesn't know, then I'm sorry.
That's just the way
I work different. I do things different in the ring. So if you think it's me, well, that's on you.
Nice. All right, so let's just jump in. You are traveling the world. You're now fighting as Sin Cara. What is going through your head right now? You find yourself in a place that you want to. Mm-hmm. What's going on?
Well, I was excited for the opportunity. I was like, man, this guy they've invested so much money in this guy, so much time, so much of everything, that I'm like, now it's my turn to, make all that investment be worthwhile for them. But guess what happened? I didn't get the same opportunities. I did not get, what he got, the benefit of the doubt, all those things that, throughout his 2-3 years that he was there, he got. I didn't.
Why do you think that happened?
My personal opinion, nothing against anybody, I think it was, if I succeeded, it was a bigger failure for Triple H.
Because that's proven
because he was the one that hired him to come to WWE. And if I succeeded, then it was going to be a bigger failure towards him on Vince. You know, showing Vince that, because Vince was the ones that pointing the finger at me. Hey, let's put this guy as Sin Cara. So I never got that push. I never got that support in those meetings. You know, hey, let's help this kid out. Let's do this. Let's do that for him. They never. You know why they brought me down to NXT? This is true. They don't say it, but I know it's true. Triple H brought me down to NXT because they wanted Kalisto to be the next Rey Mysterio.
Really?
It wasn't to showcase me or to make me NXT champion or whatever. It was to showcase him.
Well, but as you were doing this, you were proving your skills, and
exactly.
Of course,
I always
this is where you found your opportunity.
I always took it as an opportunity. I never took it in a sense like, oh, they're gonna use me, pobrecito. No. Okay, they want to use me. I'm gonna use them now, and showcase who's better. You know, and proof of it is that no matter where I go, no matter when I was with them, I would always get a reaction from the crowd, always. And that was the mentality of them when they had those meetings. Because I know this because it came out of their mouth one time. Like, oh, no matter what's in Cara, people still love him. No matter if he wins or loses. I'm like, yeah, but I want a piece of the pie too. People like winners. They don't like losers.
Yeah. You were talking about, and I was like, oh my God, that's so true that you were talking about coming back home. Y tus niños, your kids telling you, hey, Dad, how come you're losing? And you're like, how can you explain that?
It's so hard to
a kid.
Exactly. What do you say to your kids? Like, Dad, you always lose. Like, what do you expect? Oh, it's my job. You know, they don't understand that. And that was tough for me, you know, as a parent, as a performer, as a professional, to tell your kids, what do you explain to your kids? And so it came to a point that I realized, like, nothing was going to change for me, you know. And it wasn't a decision that I took from one day to another. It took me years to actually, you know, go ahead and ask for my release. I had told him a year before. I was like, let me go if you don't want me here. I was like, you're not going to let me go. And they were like, no, we're not going to, whatever. Why you want to leave, you know? And I'm like, because I'm tired of the same situation. It's always the same people that get the opportunities. The same 5-6 people all the time. And what about the rest of us? And so it wasn't something that I went on for, like, you know, that for that period of time and then I was gone. No. It took me a long time. I talked to the viewer that I had to talk to and nothing changed because everybody passes a little ball like, here. Oh, no, it's this guy, it's that guy, it's this guy. Until I finally, you know, took the decision. I prayed a lot. I called a few of my friends and I told them how I felt. And they told me, like, if you think it's time now. So that's why I decided to put out a release statement saying how I felt. Because I've always been very private in every sense of the word in my social media. But it was time for me to let people know how I felt. And them too, because I asked for a meeting with Vince. They told me that I had to make an appointment. I'm like, if I have to make an appointment with Vince after 10 years in this company, then I don't belong here.
Wow.
Simple as that. You know, nothing against anybody. And when I spoke with Carano, he's always been good to me. He was always good to me. He's always been good to me and nothing against him. I told him, this is business. This is not personal. I mean, nothing that I say is personal. Don't take it personal. And even to this day, you know, he sent me a text message when it was my birthday and it was cool, you know. Because I was there for 10 years and I built a lot of good relationships with people. But I think it's just the system. The system is rotten. That's an ugly word to use, but it's true. It's a system that needs to change. It's a system that needs to adapt to new times. You see a lot of talent go there, and then they leave. And why? Why did they want to leave? It's hard. It's hard to say, right? Because it's the biggest and most successful company in the world. And obviously, the guys that have succeeded is because they've given them the opportunity to succeed. Simple as that. It's not because he's better than me or better than the other guy. It's because they have been constant with him and they've given them the opportunity to succeed so that people would like him. The Shield wasn't forming one day. They gave him an opportunity for years to succeed. How come we never got that? How come Epico, Primo, myself, when they joined us as a group for the first time, they look like gangsters. And all of a sudden, you bring the Shield in? Oh, no, the Shield. Let's keep them together. Or like the Hurt Business, you know, Cedric Alexander, all those guys, which is awesome. How come we don't get the opportunity like that, los Latinos? We don't. Look at Kalisto. What he's doing? Nothing. Look at Metallic. What is he doing? He goes down to NXT a couple of weeks ago, and he loses to Escobar. He's in the main roster, right? He's supposed to be better than the guys from NXT in a sense. But he just threw him down there to showcase Escobar, which is perfect. just another Latino. But how come you don't give him the NXT title? Why you have to give him the Cruiserweight, the US title? How come we never get the opportunity to succeed in those big matches? Andrade's still there. He's proven himself that he's an amazing worker. He can work with anybody, go with anybody. What is he doing?
Yeah.
Not much.
And you had always, and especially it comes in factor, the thing that you were always putting yourself out there for an opportunity. You knew that you had to start from the bottom, that you knew that, but you were waiting for that chance to shine.
Exactly.
And it never happened.
And I'm glad when I got the call, when they told me they were going to grant me my release, they told me straight out, we're never going to give you the opportunity that you wanted. Like that, they told me. And at least during that moment, I was like, thank you for being honest with me.
I was right.
Yes, exactly. And I was like, thank you for being honest for once, not throwing the ball to anybody. Thank you for being honest. And I was like, I made the right decision. I definitely made the right decision. So it was one of those times that I was like, man, I'm excited for the future. I'm excited to move on. I'm excited to, showcase now my talent, have control in every sense of the word of who I am, not putting over all these guys that unfortunately suck, because they do suck, but they want to make them. It's like, it's my turn to shine. And then what happened? COVID comes along and messes with everybody.
Of course. No, sir. And again, and I was telling you this prior, I mean, not only in wrestling, but there's a lot of people that can identify with you. I mean, you were at the top. You were getting steady income. I mean, you were extremely famous. You still are, but as Sin Cara, worldwide known and everything. Yet you still decided that, you know what, I'm gonna go and follow my path.
Yeah, it was a matter of me, of who I am, of what I believe in, and I understand that God, then again, had another way for me. Maybe it wasn't that, I was there for 10 years. Okay, it's time to move on, and nothing's changed. So I gave it my opportunity. Now it's time to go and look for my opportunity. Now if they don't give it to me, let's look for it, but not be attached to anybody, because they would, they own you in every sense. And then I stopped giving ideas to the writers because nothing would happen. I started giving ideas to this or that, for merch, for everything, because the system is rotten, and everybody thinks they're better than you. The writers, the production guys, the guys from merch. All those guys are horrible, man. I'm serious. Those guys are horrible. You would give them an idea, and then they're like, "Oh no, that's a bad idea. That's not good," or whatever. Like, at least try it. Let me see what comes up with, and nothing, man. So it's tough. It was tough being in a place like that. When I had a meeting with, I was like, man, I'm the one that put my body on the line for everybody else to have a job here. If I don't wrestle, if AJ Styles doesn't wrestle, if he doesn't wrestle, how are you going to make shirts of those guys? And how the guy from merch has a job? How the writer has a job if Seth Rollins is not wrestling? How do you come up with ideas for Brock Lesnar, for all those guys? But they think they're better than you. And that's tough, because you have to depend on them, because the company depends on them. So it's so hard in that sense.
Wow, that's true. So when they finally grant you the release, everything was like, yes, I'm free from all this.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Wow. What was the one thing that kept you? Because it wasn't like an overnight thing. You said years, you talked to a lot of people. What were some of the things that you were like, they were still stuck, that maybe had you, before making that decision, that you were still stuck on? Maybe was it the steady income? Was it the fame? Was it the steady job? What was it?
The fame was never it. It was I think, now that I had kids, the steady income, being able to provide for them, being able to have something that they come home and they have their food, they have that I could pay for things that I was living with. And that's the hardest part, because okay, but then I was like, man, I'll move on, I'll be okay. I did it for 10 years without them. I can do another 10, 20, whatever I need to without them. It's okay. The world's not going to end, and I'll find a way to succeed. I'll find another way to do what I want to do, and I just want to be happy again. I want to fall in love with my career again, because I lost that. So when I lost that, that's when I realized that I'm done. I'm done here. And I tell you this from experience, because I know a lot of guys now and then feel the same way, but they don't leave because this is the thing that they want.
Of course.
And I get it, because their family depends on them. But a perfect example, Gran Metalik. He's an amazing wrestler, man. He was a 5-time world champ when he was in New Japan, when he was in Mexico, and then you bring him here. He has never won anything. Not one thing has he won.
Is that decided? I mean, it's obviously at the office above, but is that just because, is it personal? Is it just, we bring you on knowing that? How is the process?
I have no idea what's the process or what's the deal, but I think that Latinos, we don't get the opportunity that we deserve, to be honest.
Wow.
And for us, it's harder to, we have to showcase our talent, or we have to prove ourselves twice than anybody else.
And then, like we said, in your specific story, starting when you made it big now to Sin Cara permanently, already starting from negative, and maybe they already knew that, you know what, Sin Cara's not going to go back to the same opportunity.
Yeah, but you have the power of television. You have the power to change the perception of people. You have the power to do that. What happened with Roman Reigns? People didn't like him because they understood that they wanted to make him so hard. They wanted to throw him on people's throats all the time. Now that he's a heel, people like it.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, it's
which is pretty cool. I think he's doing an amazing job. He's a great worker. He's a good friend of mine. And nothing against anybody. This is not about personal stuff. This is about business. And for me, that's the thing, you know? I just wanted a chance to succeed. That's all I asked for all the time. I never asked for anything else but just a chance to succeed and showcase my talent. How come we never came to El Paso and did a documentary of my life? When I got injured, how come they didn't send somebody, a camera crew, to when I got my surgery? But when Seth Rollins got injured, let's take a crew. When the other guy got injured, let's take a crew and document everything. You know, you could tell the difference in everything.
And it's so wonderful to hear that. Not only that, because again, in any job place, in any work, there's social scenarios, but you're taking a stand for it and actually doing something about it. So that's
and like I was saying, it's nothing against anybody, not against the guys that are named. They're good friends of mine, but it's the system. It's the system that has, you know, made that in every sense of the word, and it's just so bad for a lot of us. Not just me, for a lot of guys that are still there, that are very talented. Another example I can tell you is Ricochet. Ricochet was in Japan, like, you know, filling out arenas and doing amazing matches with Ospreay and all those guys. And then, boom, he comes over here. Boom, ¿qué pasa? Pa' abajo otra vez. You know?
How discouraging that might be, right? Especially so when you come here thinking that, I made it, exactly. We're going to make it big, and then little by little seeing what happens.
Exactly.
No, Senor, I appreciate this. Let me just ask you one last question before we move on to the Spanish, to the question that I have for you in Spanish. What is one recommendation that you have for people that find themselves where you were at before?
Well, for personal experience, I think it's very important to don't lose your passion. Never let anybody take your passion away from you, because then you become miserable, you become angry, you become a person that you're not. And it's hard to realize that because you're stuck in a place. It becomes like a system. Now I understand, like, when prisoners say, like, how come I going to go all through the world if I've been in a system like this? They provide for me this, they provide me that, and all of a sudden I got to look at it on my own. That's so hard. So that happened to me when I was there for 10 years. But I realized that, you know, that I could move on, that I could do a lot of things now. I have the freedom to do many things now. And I'm just happy. I'm in a happier place. Money doesn't buy happiness.
You have your passion back.
It can buy material stuff to make you happy, but it doesn't buy happiness. There's the difference.
Wow. Well, thank you. That was very powerful. Déjame, te hago unas preguntas. Ya regresando a tu carrera, ahora, ¿dónde estás ahorita? ¿A qué le atribuyes la mayoría de tu éxito? ¿A tu talento que has tenido? ¿A tu ética de trabajo? ¿Qué es lo que piensas? ¿Sabes qué? Esto fue, obviamente es una combinación, pero ¿tú qué piensas que es?
Bueno, obviamente, pues es una combinación de todo, ¿no? De las relaciones que vas construyendo a lo largo de tu carrera. Oye, o sea, cuando yo estaba en la empresa había gente muy buena también, ¿no? No todo era malo, claro que no. Y hice relaciones con mucha gente. No nomás dentro de W, sino fuera de ella. Entonces, todas esas relaciones hoy en día están brindando fruto. ¿A qué me refiero? Que ahora que estamos con el nuevo proyecto de American Entertainment Management Group, le puedo hablar a alguien que trabajaba en W antes y que le digo, oye, ¿cómo le hago para el ring? ¿O cómo le hago para las luces? ¿O cómo le hago en cuestiones de producción o las cámaras? Entonces, todas esas relaciones que hice con toda esa gente han ayudado a construir lo que estamos haciendo ahora. El de las chamarras, el de las máscaras, el de todo ese tipo de cositas que trabajaban o que hacían cosas para la empresa. Yo siempre lo trasteé porque nunca sabía uno. Dice, mi lema siempre ha sido, todos necesitamos de todos, entonces nunca sabes, hasta el más pequeño te puede enseñar algo. Entonces, hoy en día ha sido una combinación, como tú decías, de todo, ¿no? Obviamente de la ética, de tu profesionalismo, del cómo te llevas con la gente, de tu humildad, porque si yo fuera sangrón, pues, aunque tenga el dinero o que tenga la fama, les vale gorro, la gente te va a ignorar. Pero si eres...
Y eso lo entendiste desde
Sí,
muy joven.
Desde muy joven mi abuelo y mi familia siempre me enseñó a ser humilde, a poner los pies sobre la tierra y estar tranquilo.
Ok, señor, entonces estábamos hablando de que le atribuyes, el talento, la dedicación, pero también desde joven, desde chavo, supiste, sabes, que cómo relacionarte con la gente, que ahorita, que ya estás fuera de la empresa más grande, es lo que estás desarrollando todavía, ¿verdad?
Sí, obviamente eso, te digo, eso es muy importante, las relaciones que hacemos con la gente, con las personas con las que convives, no, yo no soy Superman, no puedo hacer todo yo solo, entonces eso es muy importante, o sea, nunca sabes quién te puede enseñar algo, quién te puede ayudar en algo, entonces es importante saber tratar a la gente de una manera respetuosa, con cariño, con respeto siempre, porque pues yo también espero eso de la gente.
Sí, déjate, y aparte no es nada más por si algún día se me ofrece, pero es lo que te
No.
enseñaron tus papás, tu
Sí.
familia, lo que sabes
Sí,
que eso es lo correcto.
la
de
verdad,
hacer.
a veces lo hago sin ningún interés y algún día, a lo mejor esa persona no me va a pagar, pero a lo mejor alguien más sí, entonces, o alguien más te lo regresa, entonces así es, ¿no? Es como un ciclo de la vida.
Exacto. Señor, ¿qué es la diferencia de la gente que la hace profesional y la gente que no? Sí, sobre todo si empiezan con las mismas ganas, ¿qué es lo que pasa en el camino que la gente se pierde?
Pues a lo mejor les sucedió algo que los desmotivó, que realmente les pegó duro y perdieron el rumbo, perdieron el camino, no tuvieron la constancia, no tuvieron a lo mejor la madurez de aceptar ciertas cosas o de enfocarse realmente en sus sueños. O sea, es difícil el mundo de la lucha libre, no cualquiera tiene la oportunidad de trabajar para las empresas grandes, pero al final del día lo que tienes que hacer, a lo mejor si luchas en alguna arena o toda tu vida luchaste en alguna arena, eso te hizo feliz, no tiene nada de malo. A lo mejor tu sueño no era ir a las grandes ligas, como dicen, entre comillas, a lo mejor para ti eso era algo que te hacía feliz y para ti es llegar a las grandes ligas. No necesariamente tiene que ser de esa manera, o sea, dependiendo el enfoque que le pongas y como tú lo veas también.
¿Tú crees que también es de perseverancia que estábamos hablando antes?
Claro, sí, eso es algo que es muy importante, la perseverancia, la constancia de luchar por tu sueño, de estar ahí, de estar picando piedra, de si una parte se cierra, ¿cómo le hago para abrir otra? Si se abre otra, ¿cómo hago para abrir otra? Y así, o sea, es paso a paso, poco a poco. La palabra aquí es paciencia. Es muy difícil tener paciencia, pero pues teniendo paciencia todo se puede, ¿no? A veces estamos ahí cerquitas ya para la meta, pero a lo mejor no somos pacientes y nos salimos de la carrera. ¿Y qué pasa? Pues no vas a llegar a la meta. Es lo que sucede a veces, muchas veces en muchas carreras.
Y ya cuando estás ahí, señor, ¿qué es lo más difícil de ser un luchador profesional?
Pues mantenerte alejado de tantas cosas, ¿no? Que está ahí, de vicios, de las fracturas también, porque a veces fracturas obviamente ponen en alto muchas carreras en la lucha libre y en otros deportes también, pero sí es bien importante eso de enfocarte, de seguir entrenando, de seguir preparándote, de no perder el rumbo, de no perder la meta, de darte cuenta que cuando ya llegas, no nomás es llegar, es mantenerte. Hay que trabajar más duro.
¿Cómo le hacías tú para que no te llevara, por ejemplo, cuando el contrato, cuando el dinero llegó? ¿Cómo le hiciste tú para mantenerte todavía recto en esa línea?
Pues mis hijos, me enfocaba en eso, ¿no? En mi familia, en irme a trabajar y subirme a un ring y decir, man, estoy haciendo lo que tanto amo. Es luchar y todavía me están pagando. Y tengo algo que mucha gente quiere tener y no lo tiene. Entonces he tratado siempre de verlo de esa manera, ¿no?
El ser agradecido, el saber lo que te costó, ¿verdad? El trabajo.
Sí, el ser agradecido sobre todo con Dios siempre es bien, bien importante eso. Y con la gente que te ayuda también, ¿no?
Wow, no, señor, gracias. Ahora déjame te hago unas preguntas personales. ¿Cómo eres tú fuera del personaje? ¿Cómo describirías tu personalidad fuera del personaje?
Soy de carácter fuerte.
Sí.
Sí, obviamente con el tiempo, con los años, pues vas madurando, vas pensando un poquito más las cosas, pero soy un padre muy amoroso. Amo a mis hijos con todo mi corazón y ellos lo saben. Quiero darle siempre lo mejor a mi familia también. He aprendido a dejar las cosas a un lado. Si algún día tuvimos algún conflicto X por cualquier razón, saber que la vida es muy corta, y especialmente hoy en día, ¿no? Nos hemos dado cuenta, tristemente, mucha gente cercana a mi círculo ya no está con nosotros por cuestiones, pues, de COVID o de otras cosas, pero, pues, gracias a Dios que tuve la oportunidad de muchos de ellos que sabían que los quería, que los amaba, que nunca me guardé nada. Entonces es importante no guardarse de nada, decirle a la gente que la amamos, no nomás...
Y demostrarlo, ¿verdad?
no nomás de vez en cuando en el cumpleaños o en el o sea, sino ser constante con ellos y que sepan que que a lo mejor si algún día de mañana yo no esté, que sepan que yo los amaba. Y es igual con mis hijos, ¿no? Entonces, esa es la manera en que yo puedo hoy en día, pues, describir realmente quién es, pues, Sin Cara, Cinta de Oro.
Wow. ¿Qué te gusta hacer cuando no estás luchando, cuando obviamente pasar tiempo con tus hijos, pero que es algo que te apasiona, que a lo mejor haces?
Me gusta mucho los deportes,
¿Sí?
el básquetbol, me gusta mucho el básquetbol, me gusta ver el básquetbol. Me gusta pasar mucho tiempo en mi casa, la verdad. Disfruto mucho de estar en mi casa, de estar ahí acostado viendo televisión o Netflix o lo que esté, ¿no? Ahí.
¿Por qué pasa esto? ¿Por el tiempo que viviste o que has estado en el aire que ya sabes que al regresar?
Yo creo, es bien extraño, ¿no? Mucha gente se imagina a lo mejor que me gusta la música medio loca acá cuando entreno. Yo entreno con música más tranquilona y me gusta mucho estar más tranquilo. A lo mejor como mi trabajo es tan loco con la gente, que esto y que el otro, y busco lo opuesto, la tranquilidad, la soledad también me gusta mucho.
Wow, ok. Mira, eso sí yo no me lo imaginaba también.
Sí.
Pero no, pues gracias por pues darnos esos detalles. Señor, hablaste ya poquito de la discriminación. Platícanos más. Yo sé que hasta golpes te agarraste ya cuando estabas a nivel profesional. Platícanos poquito de esas experiencias.
Bueno, las experiencias que tuve no las adjudico en cuestiones de racismo o nada así, ¿no? Pero sí en cuestiones de que te quieren ver menos, que te quieren ver más chiquito porque a lo mejor físicamente, o a lo mejor de dónde vienes, no se imaginan de dónde vienes y quieren ahí como que hacerse lucir ahí con los compañeros y pues no saben de dónde vengo. Yo vengo del Segundo, de la Barrio Colorado, de Juarez, pues no me iba a dejar, ¿no? Le digo, ya estoy curada de espanto, les decía yo, así es que si tú me quieres venir a pantallar, como decimos, le digo, pues estás equivocado, le digo, voy a pantallar a aquel vato que a mí no me vas a pantallar. Entonces, obviamente en ese aspecto no creo que haya sido nada de eso, pero sí, obviamente pues en cuestiones de mi trabajo, ¿no? El latino siempre tiene que demostrar más en una empresa americana y prueba de ello es lo que está sucediendo hoy en día con las empresas de lucha libre en Estados Unidos. Cualquiera que tú les digas, ¿cuántos latinos, cuántos mexicanos realmente tienen para no sobresalir? O sea, todos son muy buenos luchadores, todos tienen todo para hacerla. Pero
la mentalidad,
nomás es que les den esa oportunidad, pero no se las dan.
Aparte. No, señor, gracias. Déjame, te hago una pregunta. No sé si ya lo has pensado, pero ¿cómo quieres ser recordado cuando ya tu carrera se acabe por fin? ¿Cómo quieres que la gente te recuerde luchísticamente?
Híjole, esa es muy, muy buena pregunta. La verdad, nunca me he puesto a pensar, cómo me gustaría que me recordaran. Pues nomás, o sea, no sé. A mí mi legado sería, pues, que mis hijos se sientan orgullosos de mí, ¿no? Que mi gente que está rodeada de mí o la gente de aquí de esta frontera pues se dé cuenta que pues no fue fácil, que se batalló, pero al final de cuentas pues logramos muchísimas cosas y logramos llegar el nombre de esta frontera muy en alto y eso es lo más importante. Pero ¿sabes qué es lo curioso? Que siempre es así, al final cuando ya te mueres ya todo el mundo, ay,
sí,
¿quién sabe qué? Pues ¿para qué ya? O sea, reconózcanlo cuando están vivos, ya cuando están muertos ya ¿para qué? Entonces le digo, al final del día, para mí mi legado es dejarles una educación a mis hijos y pues algo que se sientan orgullosos de mí.
¿Tú te sientes orgulloso de ti, de lo que has hecho?
Sí, gracias a Dios, sí. Obviamente no me siento conforme porque no soy conformista, por eso he tomado la decisión de ahora crear American Entertainment Management Group con mi amigo Mark Hernández, que él es dueño de American Solar Group. Y hemos decidido pues tomar esta aventura, ¿no? De darle la oportunidad a talento nuevo de esta frontera y de otros lugares. Una plataforma para muchos de ellos que no han tenido la oportunidad de trabajar pues a lo mejor conmigo o con otros compañeros que estuvimos en W. Entonces la verdad es algo que me motiva a seguir adelante, me motiva para seguir creciendo y madurando en todos los aspectos de mi carrera.
No, gracias, señor. Ahora, esta pregunta, yo le he tratado de que alguien me haga respuesta y todavía no, espero que tú, me imagino como profesional sí te la vas a hacer. ¿Por qué la cultura de lucha es tan grande en El Paso y Juárez?
Bueno, mira, en más o menos en 1923, 24, en aquella época se hacían luchas aquí en El Paso, en el Liberty Hall. El Liberty Hall ya no existe, lo hicieron demolish en 1996. Pero cuenta la historia y también en el libro del Consejo Mundial de Lucha Libre que el señor Salvador Luterot, que es el padre de la lucha libre en México, vino a Ciudad Juárez. Él trabajaba para la Hacienda, para la IRS. Lo traen al Paso, Texas, a presenciar un evento de lucha libre. Entonces de aquí se lleva la idea a México. De aquí le nace para llevársela a México y empieza a hacer luchas en las carpas, en los circos. Y posteriormente empiezan a enseñar a jóvenes mexicanos la lucha libre, porque todos los luchadores eran extranjeros, no eran mexicanos. Entonces, de ahí nace la lucha libre. Después construye la antigua Arena México, la Coliseo, y lo que conocemos hoy como la Catedral de la Lucha Libre es la Arena México. Entonces, y aquí vienen las raíces de la lucha libre mexicana. Y también nosotros tuvimos un gran boom aquí en los 80s y 90s, con grandes estrellas como Rockstar, como Cinta de Oro, Sergio Aguirre Martínez, como muchos de esos luchadores que venían de fuera y se quedaban, como Flama Roja, el señor Arturo García, que él es de la escuela del Diablo Velasco, como el Samurai, como Anfibius. ¿Sabes quién es Anfibius?
Ese no lo había escuchado, la verdad.
El Crazy 32.
Oh, ok.
Así luchaba él en México, como Anfibius. Entonces todos son de esa escuela del Diablo Velasco, pero se vinieron a quedar en aquella época aquí en los 80s, en Ciudad Juárez, y enseñar a jóvenes y trabajar con jóvenes de aquella época aquí. Y hoy en día pues ves tantos también como obviamente la familia legendaria como son los Cobardes. Fishman es de Torreón, pero se hizo en Ciudad Juárez.
Wow, qué bonita historia.
El Marqués, el señor que en paz descanse también, el Marqués. O sea, hay muchísima historia de grandes luchadores aquí en esta frontera. Pero a veces, como decimos siempre, no hay nada que hacer en la frontera. Pues, ¿cómo es? O sea, hay muchísimas cosas que hacer.
Déjate muchísimas historias.
Y muchísimas historias que conocer.
Exacto, te digo, mientras estoy haciendo este proyecto de conocer es cuando me doy cuenta de que hay mucha gente. Uno pensaría que no, pero no, sí hay mucha gente siguiendo su pasión, su arte. Y la verdad es que sí.
Artistas, pintores, músicos, de lo que te puedas imaginar. El Paso ha tenido grandes talentos, productores. Hay un productor, no sé cómo se llama, pero era productor de Tupac.
¿En serio?
Sí, de aquí del Paso. Del Paso y Juárez.
Esa no me la sabía.
Te digo, hay muchísima historia aquí en esta frontera y cerca de la frontera. La persona que pintó el mural que está ahorita en la Arena México se llama Miguel Valverde. Él es de Cuauhtémoc, Chihuahua, pero vive en Chihuahua y es amigo mío que le mando un gran saludo. Él fue el que pintó el mural de la Arena México.
Wow. Te digo, wow. Sí. Señor, me va a tener que contar contigo para que me digas, se ve que te apasiona todos esos temas. Sí. Digo, yo solo me acuerdo cuando tenía 6, 7 años, mis papás también nos llevaban al Neri Santos, ahí es donde aprendí lo que era el agua del riñón por primera vez. Pero desde ahí se hace, bueno, te digo, yo recuerdo, pero como dices tú, ya en los 80s, los 70s todavía era la época de oro. En comparación, ¿cómo estamos ahorita Juárez, El Paso? ¿Crees que ahí vamos, seguimos? ¿Qué crees que...?
Pues de talento hay muchísimo talento, eso es inevitable. Aquí el luchador de esta frontera tiene muchísimo talento, son jóvenes que les apasiona lo que es la lucha libre, pero pues falta ese empujoncito, ¿no? A darle, vámonos, vuélale, no te quedes aquí, no te quedes estancado, busca la manera de sobresalir, de buscar otros rumbos, otras ondas. Y a veces es difícil porque cuando ya tienes una familia, tienes hijos, no es tan fácil decir, ya me voy, bye, hasta luego, voy a intentar a ver si lo hago, ¿no? Lo entiendo perfectamente. Lo positivo de todo esto es que hoy con redes sociales, con Twitter, con Facebook, te puedes dar a conocer mucho más fácil que antes. Y hoy en día lo que estamos tratando de hacer nosotros es hacer pagos por eventos que no nomás se ven en Estados Unidos y en todas partes del mundo. Entonces de eso se trata esto.
Exacto, y es lo que te iba a preguntar, creo que ya hablaste de la compañía American Entertainment Management Group, que la idea de esto es sacar esos talentos y no nada más sacarlos, pero también darles tú la influencia, lo que tú ya aprendiste, lo que sabes y lo que se requiere para desarrollarlos, ¿verdad?
Sí, ayudar en lo que yo pueda, darles un poco de mi conocimiento de lo afortunado que he sido y dejarlos volar. Si es con nosotros, si es con alguien más, pues bienvenido, ¿no? Al final del día se trata de eso, de apoyar, de darles esa oportunidad, y nosotros no somos dueños de nadie. Nosotros lo que queremos es ayudar, enfocarnos y crear. Eso es lo importante, crear esas oportunidades que se merecen. Pero obviamente también nos gustaría crear pues una liga importante, ¿no? No nomás queremos hacer shows de vez en cuando, queremos que esto sea duradero, que tengamos trabajo para darles trabajo a los demás también.
Y como hablaste, la gente no sabe que no nomás son los luchadores que están ahí, el que depende muchísimas personas sobre eso, y que tú estés pensando también en generar empleos, en afectar a otra gente, pues olvídate.
Sí, y te digo, nosotros queremos hacer las cosas con excelencia. Esa es la palabra que a veces la gente no le gusta usar, pero es importante enfocarte en eso, hacer las cosas con excelencia, porque la idea de mucha gente es, renta un gimnasio, pongo un ring, luchadores, y ahí está una función. Ok, pero no queremos caer en eso. Nosotros queremos hacer algo más bonito para la gente, algo con excelencia para todos ellos, producción, que mis compañeros se sientan importantes como lo son, porque ellos son la materia prima de nuestro espectáculo.
Exacto.
Entonces de eso se trata esto, es lo que está haciendo American Entertainment, no es compitiendo con nadie más, cada quien tiene su visión, los promotores de aquí tienen su visión, que se les respeta. Tristemente la lucha libre está muy quemada en esta frontera por mucha gente. Me tocó ir a preguntar en varios lugares para que queríamos rentar para hacer una función y arreglar con producción. Y me dijo un señor, ¿sabe qué? No, yo no quiero nada que ver con la lucha libre.
Porque ya se habían quemado con alguien más.
Y entonces,
Bueno, alguien más.
Yo me quedé así como que, wow, qué triste, ¿no? Entonces le dije, ¿sabe qué? Discúlpeme. Le digo, en nombre de mis compañeros de la lucha libre le pido una disculpa. No se preocupe, joven. Le digo, pero nosotros no somos igual. Así fue lo que yo le comenté, pero sí queremos hacer las cosas de una manera diferente. Y va a tomar tiempo, eso lo sabemos. Pero de que se puede, se puede.
Wow. Y la gente que te conoce, que sabe tu pasión y sabe tu intención, es por eso mismo que, digo, te ha ido muy bien en todo lo que has hecho, porque sabes tú
pues,
todo lo que es.
Como te digo, o sea, tenemos que ser pacientes, pero al final del día tenemos un propósito y ese propósito los estamos cumpliendo. Llevamos una función que fue el 28 de noviembre del 2020 y gracias a Dios nos fue bien, fue nuestra casa de presentación, toda la gente quedó contenta. Hay cosas que hay que mejorar, sí, muchas. Pero vamos por buen camino, que eso es lo importante.
Exacto, y fíjate que esa yo y un amigo nos la aventamos, la hora la agarramos mal y ya nos tocó ya nada más la última, pero el talento es obvio y regresar. Obviamente es muy diferente pelear sin gente.
Sí, se oye así como la arena muy vacía y toda la onda, estamos acostumbrados al ruido y que gritan y esto, pero nos adaptamos, los seres humanos somos buenos para adaptarnos a todo y pues al final del día es lo que nos toca vivir y hay que seguir adelante y esperemos en Dios que más adelante ya podamos tener ahora sí gente en las gradas.
Perfecto, y si no, invita a mi hija y a mí, vamos a estar ahí gritándoles a todos, si no es mucha, pues si no es mucha molestia, pero vamos a hablar ya nada más sobre el próximo evento que ya tienes, próximamente, platícanos.
Sí, el 30 de enero va a ser en pago por eventos, te metes a amgppv.com y ahí puedes comprar el pago por evento, $24.99, está barato. Estás en tu casa, puedes disfrutar ahí. Nos encantaría tener gente, pero ahorita con lo que está sucediendo sabemos que tenemos que guardar las normas, lo que está pasando. Si hay algún cambio, obviamente les vamos a dejar saber. En esta ocasión es un programa pues lleno de figuras locales y también de afuera. En la lucha estrella vienen nuevamente los puertorriqueños, los Colón, Primo y Épico, y Chris Masters. Chris Masters es un chavo que mide como 6'3", 250 libras de puro músculo, y viene a ser pareja con ellos, ¿no? En tríos en contra de tu servidor y La Ascensión.
¿Quién es?
Hoy conocido como The Awakening, Big Con y Vic, los que eran The Ascension en WWE. Entonces ellos vienen a apoyarme a mí. Está también Aéreo y Magno en contra del Hijo del Impostor y el Dragón, que son grandes talentos. Magno estuvo también en NXT. Y sabemos que ahorita Dragón y el Hijo del Impostor acaban de firmar con una empresa en México también, un contrato. No sé cómo funciona ese contrato, pero me dijeron, nosotros estamos también puestos para trabajar contigo, entonces se los agradezco y la verdad que nosotros estamos aquí para darles también esa plataforma, ¿no? Para que sobresalgan. Son jóvenes que conozco desde estaban chiquititos, hoy en día ya andan luchando, entonces son grandes exponentes de la lucha libre. Está también Aviático, que se va a enfrentar al Legendario Junior, que el Legendario viene de la familia de los Cobardes. Entonces ya es el nieto del cobarde de Kiko.
No me la sabía, en serio.
Wow. Sí, pero las mujeres luchadoras. Por primera vez, Shaw Guerrero, la hija de Eddie Guerrero, se presenta en El Paso, Texas. Por primera vez para esta función. Ella es nacida aquí, pero nunca ha tenido la oportunidad de luchar aquí en El Paso. Entonces va a hacer su debut en El Paso, Texas, en contra de Amazona, que es una jovencita también que trae muchas ganas de sobresalir. Entonces estamos tratando de darles variedad a la gente para que la gente vea. Está también Dark Fusion en contra de Skybird. Son dos grandes luchadores que ya tienen bastante tiempo, pero que son grandes exponentes. Entonces yo les quiero dar la oportunidad, a lo mejor algo diferente. Siempre están acostumbrados a luchar 2 en contra de 2. En esta ocasión vienen mano a mano. Y también una lucha, esta está bien interesante.
A ver.
Esta es la Bestia Segundo en contra del Monaguillo Segundo.
Okay.
Padre en contra de hijo. Entonces el Monaguillo hizo su debut el 28 de noviembre con nosotros. En esta ocasión hizo su debut y le ganó a su papá. Entonces, en esta ocasión van mano a mano. Vamos a ver qué pasa, si el papá tiene piedad de su hijo o si el hijo tiene piedad del padre. La verdad está muy interesante la dinámica que
Deja
estamos
tú por
ahí
todo
con
el
ellos.
talento que hay, muy
Entonces,
accesible, como
sí.
dices, como en la casa. La calidad del video, por cierto, muy bueno.
Gracias.
Estuvo todo
Sí.
bien hecho. Te digo, hubiera estado mejor con gente. Claro
Sí,
que
claro.
hay que
Ajá.
adaptarnos, pero a la misma vez te digo, no solamente estás viendo lucha, pero estás apoyando a la gente, estás viendo,
Sí,
te
sí,
digo,
sí.
los talentos pues sí, que están viniendo y aparte pues a figuras tan grandes
Sí,
como
y a veces la
ustedes.
gente decimos, no, pues no trae nada aquí en El Paso. Hoy es tiempo de apoyar. Si la gente y las empresas están pues invirtiendo, ahora es el tiempo del público de apoyarnos, de decir, ok, para que se pueda hacer cosas mejores en El Paso, aquí está mi apoyo. Entonces,
Exacto.
¿quieren eso? Pues apóyenos, para eso estamos aquí. amgppv.com, ahí pueden comprar el pago por evento, $24.99, está baratísimo para que lo disfrute. La verdad que estamos muy emocionados y felices de la vida de poner esto para todos ustedes.
No, señor, gracias. Y ojalá se pueda con gente, pero si no, de todos modos te digo, por el talento que hay, lo que va a hacer, la verdad, pues es algo que no hay
Sí,
que ni
viene.
pensarlo. Última pregunta, señor, que le hago a todos mis invitados. En El Paso, ¿qué es algo que te gusta? No se puede decir la comida, por favor. Y la primera parte de la pregunta es algo que te gusta mucho del Paso, algo que tú, por ejemplo, cuando viajas, extrañabas de la frontera, y algo que a lo mejor cambiarías o que te gustaría ver.
Bueno,
de
algo que me
más.
gusta es la gente, su gente. En El Paso, si tú vas a algún lugar, la gente es muy amable,
Ujú.
la mayoría. Te saludan y pásele, y son como muy...
Acogedoras, muy
Ándale,
buena gente.
exactamente, es muy buena gente. Y entonces, algo que cambiaría de aquí a lo mejor sería la manera en que pensamos del Paso la gente.
Sí. Ok.
O sea, la gente piensa de una manera negativa, que aquí no hay trabajos, que aquí no puedes mejorar, que aquí no puedes sobresalir, y no es cierto, aunque hay muchísimas cosas que puedes lograr. Pero nosotros tenemos que hacer el caminito, picar la piedrita para que todo eso...
Empieza con nosotros pensar diferente.
Sí, exactamente, empieza desde
Ah.
ahí, desde la mentalidad. Y eso es bien importante porque toda la gente dice, I wanna get out of El Paso, me quiero ir. Luego se van, regresan y digo, pues, pues no, que te ibas a ir, que andas
Sí.
aquí.
No,
Entonces,
tienes mucha razón y como dices tú,
sí,
no hay nada que hacer, no hay... Espérame, la verdad es que sí, le tienes que buscar y
sí.
aparte te digo, hay mucha gente joven que está queriendo hacer las cosas, las está
Exactamente.
haciendo bien, tenemos de
Sí,
todo,
sí,
la verdad.
sí. Si hay fútbol, vaya a apoyar el fútbol, los
Ujú.
Locomotives. Si hay béisbol en los Chihuahuas, vayan a los Chihuahuas. O sea, se quejan, pero no apoyan. Entonces, ¿cómo está la onda, pues?
Fíjate
¿De
que
eso se
muy buen
trata de
punto,
eso?
señor.
Sí.
No, pues está bien. Señor, he disfrutado mucho la plática. Muchísimas gracias
No, de
por tu
nada,
tiempo. Te digo
ustedes.
que me des la confianza de platicar poquito. Yo sé que no, hombre, nos podíamos quedar aquí horas de tantas historias que tú tienes. Espero que la gente lo haya disfrutado. Pero nuevamente te quiero dar las gracias por tu tiempo, señor.
No, a ti gracias y a toda la gente, de verdad, muchísimas gracias por tener el interés en mi carrera, ¿no? Y en lo que estamos haciendo, y de verdad les mando muchas bendiciones. Hay que seguirnos cuidando, señores, seguirnos cuidando para que esto pase pronto y podamos volver a la normalidad. Un saludo a todos y muchas bendiciones.
Exacto. Hasta luego. That's all I got. Adiós.